This is Dmitry from Fraudbusters. In this series, we are spotlighting real thoughts and insights from industry leaders. Today, I am joined by Chen Zamir, founder of Native Risk fraud strategy consulting firm. Let's jump straight to the question. Chen, you wrote in your post at the Saturday Fraud Strategist that ATO is more about operations and reputation than direct financial loss. Why isn't an ATO considered a money loss, and where should we stop it? At the sign-in phase or when the money moves?
Yeah, good question. So I think let's start with a disclaimer. It really depends on the business, right? So where I would be less worried about ATO is e-commerce, where many times, because e-commerce shops are PCI compliant, and usually they would not hold the actual funding instrument, the credit card, the bank account, whatever, on file on their system. That means that while you can access the account and maybe do some things within the account, it would be pretty hard for you to, let's say, engage in fraudulent activity that manifests as loss without having some stolen financial instrument of your own. And maybe that's what you're doing, right? Maybe you have a stolen card and you're hacking a legitimate account and it has a very long history. And so maybe the scrutiny of the risk systems are not that high for that account. And then you're attaching the stolen card and operating it. So it can happen, but these are relatively rare cases. And in most of these cases, the financial damage that can be done is relatively limited. But it is still bothersome, right? You still look not quite secure to your customers. There is still quite a lot of overhead that you need to manage operationally and sometimes legally. And especially if you are under a very widespread attack, then like the PR and the brand and reputation impact can be also quite significant. So that is one case. With fintechs and FIs, I would say it really depends, and it depends on how easy it is to drain the account if it has balance. So, for example, I go into a wallet, right? And I add my own bank account. It can be stolen. It can be a bank account that I've created as a fraudster and I own personally. And I basically drain the balance, or I top up the wallet account from an existing credit card on file that belongs to the victim, and then I withdraw it to my bank account. And obviously that would result in financial damage, but sometimes I would not be able to do that because I can only withdraw funds into secure, known funding sources that maybe have been used to top up the account, right? So this is an example. So with fintechs and FIs, this really depends on the actual business model. And in some cases, ATO can definitely result in financial losses. When it comes to the second part of the question, when to stop it, during login or on let's say, on the transaction or payment or withdrawal action itself? It's a very, very good question. I would say it really depends. I would say that if your risk team and infrastructure are relatively, I would say, you don't feel too secure with your capabilities, I would say stop it at login. This is the safest choice. But other than the safest choice, you also have the more sophisticated choice, and that is to allow fraudsters to go into the account and continuing to expose their attack vector and their different assets that they're using up until they are trying to make the harmful action and then stop it. Why? Because within that time period, they can expose more of their assets that you can or block list for a lack of a better term, and basically block these fraudsters repeating attempts if they come in the future. For example, the fraudster might change devices or change IP addresses. They might add a new funding source, as we just described, right? A stolen funding source to a good account. They might change the contact details like email, shipping address, phone number. So all of these things you can collect and kind of like list them as assets that belong to fraudsters. And of course, you're running the risk. You're running the risk that even though you're tracking that fraud, somehow it slips through the cracks and still the fraudster manages to do something harmful, maybe because you didn't think about all the different attack vectors, and maybe because there was a system failure of any sort. And this is kind of like the choice that you need to make, and I would make it per team.
Great. Thank you, Han. Follow to find more.